sort of dance time.
I hope I get it back.
Yeah,
I will repay it in some way. How's that? So I thought it'd be really good to talk about Zap just for 5 minutes. Now, why am I talking about Zap? It's because it's one of our coolest projects. You know, OWASP. It's Z-Attack proxy. It's as you see, it's a web application scanner. It's so widely used. It's probably used by 50% of the companies I can think of, if not more. It's freely available. It's an OWASP project. It has been since about at least 2010, probably earlier. So one of the first. It's also a flagship project of OWASP, and OWASP sort of ranks projects in flagship, production, lab, incubator, and it's flagship and has been for 10 years, and deservedly so. If you've ever, quick poll, users of Zap. Yes, there's a few, yes, potential users of Zap, yeah, go on, all of you. So, a really superb project. I can't big it up enough, and it's all maintained by volunteers. So OWASP is entirely volunteer driven. OWASP has a few permanent employees, but that's just to keep the website going. Oh, go on.
Quick question. What did Z stand for? I don't think I ever knew.
Yeah, so I never asked Simon what it meant, but you can tell us they're British, because it should be Z-Attack proxy. Z for Z. If you're British, it's the last last letter in the
I thought it was something to do with Pulp Fiction, like Z. I was trying to think, where did it come from?
I don't know. I sort of vaguely wondered, but I never actually. Anyway, yes, I digress. So, what's happened is it's perfectly okay and all is good, right? That's the summary at the end. But what the core team of Zap have decided to do is actually move the project away from OWASP. So that's why I wanted to talk to you about it today, because I didn't want you to suddenly go, what? Who is this? Is it paid for? It's certainly not going to be paid for. They're moving, and as you can see, they're moving from the OWASP Foundation to something called the Software Security Project. Now, this is a new project within the Linux Foundation. And at the moment, because it's very new, as far as I know, it's only Zap is the only project, software security project, but you know, that might change, that sort of thing. There's various, and also, so the Zap core team, which includes Simon and Rick, sorry if I haven't mentioned them, they're also going with the project, as why would they not? And so they're going into the Linux Foundation. And I think a couple of them are now employed by the Linux Foundation as money, you know, hooray. And really, it's welcomed. I know this sounds strange, but it's welcomed by OWASP because we're not possessive. That would be weird. It's a voluntary thing. It's all about the security in the tool. It's not about OWASP. It never is. It should never be. So what I want to finish up with is, that wasn't just my opinion. It's Grant, who is the Global Foundation Chair, sent out a communication. You might have seen it, some of you, if you're OWASP members. Okay, I'm obsessing. So it's got to be transferred over to SSP, in this secure software project. So the branding has got to change because it's no longer OWASP. It's still supported by that same core team. There we go, and this is their statement. You know, Ricardo, I kept forgetting your name, but you are, you know, literally honoured and valued. They've been with OWASP for so very long, And OWASP and Linux Foundation are working just to make it transparent. You don't see the change, but you'll see suddenly that it doesn't say OWASP anymore. But Linux Foundation, pretty cool foundation. It's not paid for, it never would be. Why would you ever make that paid for? That's just wrong, isn't it? And that's it. That's how do I do? Is that 5 minutes?
More or less,
Did
yeah,
I do
sounds
6
good.
minutes?
Yeah.
Sorry, yeah, absolutely. And it's just to reassure you that it's all good. How's that? Did I reassure you? Yeah, please use that. It really is a superb tool. We still use it in Humble Drop. Sorry. Yeah. Okay, Dan, have you got your glass of water?
It's just running.
Okay, I will hand you over to. Yeah, just
Slide. Is there a clicker?
No.
Just use my fingers then.
There you go. Your water.
Oh, thank you. Very kind of you. Right, okay, so a little bit of context before I start. It's with the star field. Boom. Right, okay, so a little bit of context before I start. I normally give this talk to other testers, so people who do testing full-time as their job, whether they work in automation, performance, functional security, API testing, whatever it is they might do. So my background is in quality assurance and testing, and I know that that's often a controversial topic in software development, i.e. where do you put your testers, how do you utilize your testers, do you need them? And I know various companies and orgs have either gone through a cycle of either employing or not employing testers. And I joined a company called Metaswitch in the September of lockdown. They were in the process of being acquired by Microsoft, which is where I now work. Before that, if I just bring up my intro deck, you can see I grew up near Brighton, so I'm a Sussex lad, although I've been in Bristol-ish since I got the task of working on it for the org I was working on at the time, a company called New Voice Media, who's since been bought by Vonage. I worked here for a while, not at Sage, but at Bright Pearl. The company was acquired by Sage about 10 years ago. And this has essentially been my journey. I have been speaking in the testing circuit for quite a while, and I find that engaging with testers who I perceive as being great learners, because we constantly have to adapt to either new techniques, technologies, very, very quickly, especially if we move between projects. If we're testers on a project, then we will move quickly and adapt, usually quite quickly, if we're sent from one project to another. Personally, I've also been self-employed, so I've contracted at various sorts, including the MOD in Taunton, Hydrographic Office, and various other places. So we kind of have to adapt our skills very rapidly to the needs of either our client or our customer or employer. So I live in Hanham, which is on the outskirts of Bristol, and I'm going to Rome tomorrow evening to ask my partner to marry me. So that's a little bit about me. And
we're live streaming this.
Yes. She's not watching this. I have the ring and everything, and we're going tomorrow. She won't be watching. I will send it to her though. And if you can see here, there's my good friend Milo, my Yorkie poo, who I walk most days. So I travel, or used to travel a lot when we could travel a lot, and we can now travel quite a bit. And I see exploring our world as a great metaphor for how we explore and understand software. So the way I see it is that when we approach something new and we're testing something new, it's a journey we're going on. We're trying to identify potential risks to the product, not just to security, of which is one risk to a product. It might also be delivery of the product or usability of the product or accessibility of the product. These are all risks to delivery of a product. And this is Coombe Beach near Eastbourne, Excellency. And I like to see different shapes and learn about different things when I travel. So it's an art museum in Tallinn, in Estonia. Very unusual place to visit, and it provided a lot of thinking to happen as I go through those journeys and explore new things. The lake at the front of the slides was a lake in Washington State, United States, which I nearly drowned in. And me on Mount Taylor in Tenerife. This is normally not a bit of Tenerife you normally go to. You normally go to the beach. You don't normally go up the mountain, the volcano that's right slap bang in the middle of the island. So I love travel and exploring, and I use the skills that I use when I'm traveling to help me with my testing as well. And this for me would be the ultimate journey. Where could I go with this? Think about the risks that I might encounter in doing a journey like this. So in talking about quality, I like, and testing in general, I like to refer to some of the strong leaders in this community. This is Anne-Marie Charrett. She's of Irish descent, but she's been living in Australia for many, many, many years. She says this: testing is the headlights of the project, quality is the journey, business outcomes are the destination. Which I think I probably share with most of you. We want to deliver something that's great for our customers. And in the context of an OWASP meetup, security for our customers. I took it a little step further. If testing is the headlights of the project, security testing is the machine guns behind the headlights. So you'll see I'm a fan of a lot of different things. If anyone spotted the Easter egg in the introduction slide, another thing I'm a fan of, you might spot it in more detail later. I think that this is an interesting analogy because when we're driving through, if the headlights are testing is the headlights of a project, if we don't have anything to back that up, like the tools behind us to help us identify security vulnerabilities, be it threat modeling or any security testing techniques, then you're going to miss things and not be able to actually have to take some risks to find some risks. And that means potentially doing some damage. And that means creating an environment where doing that work is safe and useful and productive and helpful. And also where you might, find the unexpected along your journey. So when I last gave this talk, I was in Romania, and I did a little recce around the hotel to see. I play a lot of video games. One of them, my favourites, is the video game Hitman. We have to go in and assassinate people and find ways into buildings and all that kind of thing. So I did a little journey. This is the main one through the middle of the hotel. Right, it's fairly standard. You walk through the revolving doors and you come up to reception, right? What if I came in through the underground car park? Or I spotted the back gate with some security cameras on it? Or additional security cameras around the edge of the car park and the building? Or a back door that's completely unopened and props open, so I could either go through that door or shimmy up the pipe and climb through the vent. Or I could eventually find my way into the top of the auditorium here through this door. And this is a view from the lift that goes up. So, I could, is it Skyfall where he jumps onto the bottom of the elevator and he hangs himself off? What is exploratory security? So exploratory testing is a technique or approach that you might have heard of, you might have not, And it's essentially where you are learning and doing test design and execution simultaneously. It's quite well thought of and used in as a test technique or a test approach by a lot of testing professionals. Those that tend to shy away from doing things like test automation, which is a useful tool and great fun if you enjoy that side of testing. I don't particularly. I prefer to use my eyes and my senses to find the bugs that are interesting. So, is it philosophy? Perhaps. It's not a new approach. Test security, exploratory testing has been around as an idea for 30 plus years. It was coined by various people, but the main proponents have been, I don't want to use it, the exploratory testing school has been a bit controversial, and I don't like to sort of go on about the people that named it, because they're generally not very nice people, but the techniques are good. So, but it's built upon existing exploratory testing approaches. When I'm doing any kind of testing, I like to use the right tools to do it. You talked about Zap earlier, John. One of my favorite tools. I've used other proxies as well, be it Fiddler or Burp Suite or any other kind of tool that I can find to do the work. I've also done a little bit of learning on using Kali, which also includes Zap, but I'm not permitted to use it at Microsoft. There are teams that are allowed to do it. It's very compartmentalized. So I have to ask permission to use certain subsets in my organization because it's so vast and they're not allowed to, there's lots of rules about what you can and can't do. But I like to use the right tools for the right jobs. Like if I'm shaving, that's the kind of razor I use. So I don't use a cheap plastic razor that is contributing to pollution. I like to use a metal razor with a nice sharp blade and a shaver brush. So I'm not contributing extra plastic, and also it's actually a better tool to use. You get a better shave with it. So, but one of the things, the greatest things, and this is partly why I want to talk to you guys, is you're all either interested in security or existing security professionals. You wouldn't be here if you weren't. So where I'm more looking for feedback is like how you have inculcated these kinds of thinking with your teams, with the people that you work with, and how to improve that process. Because that's one of the biggest challenges, challenging the mindset of people, getting people security aware. Now there's what, 1, 2, 3, 4, 7, 8, 9, 10, about 12 people in the room. Okay, and we might all come from different places or the same place, but then we will go back and have these conversations with other people and hopefully invite people in to have this conversation again. And then, it then germinates and grows. The problem is security is a bit of a dirty word in a lot of places. In a lot of conversations, it's kind of the security that dare not speak its name, the quality aspect that dare not speak its name rather. So one of the things I'd like to get across is trying to get that feedback from you on how we can do that better. Maybe we can do some of that at the end. So I'll whiz through my slides. So this model here, the DevOps model, is quite well known. My mate Dan Ashby, he's head of quality at a company called Ada Health. He came up with a slide deck ages ago, and I'll just put in where security happens. And I hope that you kind of agree with this. Chris, you talked about bringing a lot of this forward so we think about it earlier. And it resonated so much for me. It might look like I wasn't listening, but I was listening because I was just updating my slide deck. But security happens all across our life cycle, regardless of what life cycle you choose to do your development work in. So I hope that sort of reflects on some of the things you've been saying today. And of course, we've got the triumvirate, the CIA, confidentiality, integrity, and availability. So who we talk to, how we talk to them about it, how we protect our customers' data, or any internal data that we have. The integrity of the systems that it's held on. So is it up to scratch to be able to do the job? And when I talk about this sort of stuff that people aren't security professionals, this is where I have to sort of latch them on to the product, so they think, oh, yeah, how is this relevant to me? And then availability as well. So, how available is the product to the customer? If we deny access, or an external actor denies access, how do we maintain that and keep that up and running? So one of the things I do is I look out to where people in the security community can help people out within the generalist software development community and the testing community. One of those people is Tanya Janka. She's from Canada. Has anyone here heard of her? Yeah. So a lot of her material is superb. And if you aren't already, share it with your colleagues, internally or externally. She does a lot of online training and in-person training. And she's got a really strong opinion. I don't necessarily agree with it, but she feels that generalist testers or generalist software people shouldn't be necessarily doing security work. She says talks about it as a very, very discrete and separate activity. But she says that they can be involved in the security life cycle, and that's important that they are. That's why I disagree with it, because it's not a very holistic view.
Yeah, I think she might expand on it more, that she's sort of saying, don't just take a standard tester and assume they're also doing the security stuff.
Indeed.
It's good to have someone who is trained up in thinking of security.
Yeah.
So it's just different ways of looking at the same problem.
Indeed.
Yeah.
I've found that when I've talked about that, is that because I've learned, my security learning has been completely off my own back. And the only time I've ever been given any training, formal training, is when I went and did a course at Rapid 7 in Cambridge.
Yeah.
And that was just NOWA's Top 10 course, and that was 10 years ago, and it's been changed twice since then, I think. So, but she says, yes, security is a part of quality, and security testing is a specialization within the field of testing, and by definition requires more knowledge and training to form the skill set in order to do the job. That is something I do agree with. And where we have people who are interested in security, we should nurture that. Identify those individuals who you think might be good to pivot their skills in a different direction, or they want to go completely down the rabbit hole, and I'll talk about the rabbit hole in a minute. How far down the security journey do they go? Or do you pull them back and they just dip their toe in? And I think, I've done a bit of both, and I find it either hard to step away from it sometimes. You were about to say something, Chris?
Yeah, the security as part of quality statement, I think, is a really interesting one, really important one. The question is, how much do you see that being the case? Because I think if software developers really bought into that, we'd have fundamentally more secure software.
Yeah.
Because I think a lot of software has to see quality as absolutely crucial part of their job. So if security was fundamentally wrapped up into that, then we'd have a lot more security testing going on.
I think so, and that's for me. That's my reason for doing what I'm doing. Is I'd like that to happen a lot more, and getting that idea that yes, it's a specialism, but it is integral to the delivery of a product. And quality bars should include, if you have a quality bar to measure the quality of your product, whatever that quality might be, how easy is it to use, how accessible is it, how secure is it, has got to be part of that journey. This is why, you were talking, Shane, about this tick box exercise of getting
Cyber Essentials.
Yeah, Cyber Essentials. I've not had much experience with that, but it sounds to me it's just like they're ticking boxes for the sake of it, rather than actually it being part of their software development processes, which seem to me a bit counterintuitive if it's just a tick box exercise. So we have in Microsoft, we have the attitude of a growth mindset. If you want to take on something and do something new, or drive change in your org, because it's a massive company, and working for them is quite intimidating, because any bit of Microsoft that you're in is a small cog in a massive machine. And even my small cog of that is a small cog inside a big machine, inside an even bigger machine. So it's often very, very unfathomable to be able to think, okay, what impact do I have here? And the impact you have is like driving change and understanding how you can have impact and supporting others into doing the same. So I'm a security evangelist outside of Microsoft, but also inside as well. So I help with the threat modeling activities of other teams to help bring up their the quality bar from a security perspective. But also at the moment, I'm working on implementing Defender for containers, which is a product that Microsoft owns to support Kubernetes infrastructure in your rollout. So, how far down the rabbit hole do you go? How far do you take that security learning? And on what's basically happened for me personally recently is I've found myself a niche where I am a tester on a team, and I might do something that isn't security related. But if there is a security task happening, I will volunteer to do that, or advise on a team that is doing something security related, so I can help drive that mindset. Now, I'm not doing security testing or pen testing day to day all the time, but I am supporting the activity that will enable that to happen. And we do get external people outside of Microsoft to come on board to do that for our products. And I have to build the framework in which they're able to develop their test plan and things like that. So that's how I get involved. Like yourself, you were talking about threat modeling. That's something I talk about a lot to testers, because I feel that's where they can add a lot of value to a team, is by helping you identify risks and threats that developers might not necessarily see, because they might be more embedded in the product and it's harder for them to have some perspective there. I'm not saying that they don't, I'm just saying because testers generally sit outside that sometimes, they can often have a perspective that others might not see. They have the mindset of finding problems, basically. So earlier you talked about, is it DICE?
Yeah.
Similarly, modeling your application, identifying potential threats, evaluating risks. And then later, once you've done that, the threat modeling side, locating those vulnerabilities and developing mitigations. So I like to maybe to stick this in the mindset of everyone that I talk to think about how you can be part of that. So it's a bit broken up here, but I do threat modeling exercises with testers at workshops, in testing conferences and other places, or even in the evenings. I can volunteer to do them in the evenings in Bristol or in London. And this is a group of folks, I think, in Romania or Germany, I forget which, where they're using things like mind maps or lists to help them model the product. They would have given I use OWASP Juice Shop actually to do this. So if I've got a fresh bunch of people in, say, here's a web application, what are the potential threats to this? Sometimes they go in and find a vulnerability straight away. But we just talk about, at a general perspective, okay, what are the risks here? What could happen? Could you have a breach of the sign-on feature, or purchasing product, or credit card data, that kind of thing? So getting them to think about risks and threat models in that way, by actually practically doing with them. It's maybe an hour and a half to 2 hour session, but it's fun.
I forget the name of it, but there's a card game.
Cornucopia?
No, it's specifically a threat modeling tool. Effectively, you pull out a card, which is a type of threat.
Yeah.
And you then go, okay, can this apply to our system?
So Adam Shostak made one.
Yeah.
But there is another one called Cornucopia as well.
Okay.
Yeah. It's both good games.
Yeah.
So one thing that you can get your testers or other engineers interested in to try and find areas of risk would be, what are the features and functions you're intending to deliver? Where does the data go to? Where does it come from? Where does it stay? Where is it stored? What your assets are, what are you intending to protect? So is it customer data? Is it internal data? Any other kind? Is it PII, for example? Configurations. Now, on my particular project, we use a lot of Terraform, we use Kubernetes, we use Helm charts, that kind of thing. That's your configurations, or even things in your storage buckets or whatever. I mean, we use Azure, obviously, but there are other configurations you can use. So those people, those engineers and testers, are going to need to understand how they could potentially be exploited or modified in order that someone could get around them. And then obviously connectivity in and outside of the box, outside the DMZ or firewall, or connection to the internet, or third-party integrations, which we've touched on already today. So, yeah, you mentioned Adam Shostak earlier. He's not the only one who's done a Death Star model. But, I mean, yes, that particular vulnerability. Now, I am a Star Wars fan. I know that vulnerability was deliberately installed by its creator. Okay, so is it really a vulnerability that, you know, did they threat model it properly? Did they think, okay, we might have an insider, there's a risk here to the product because you've got a potential member of the rebellion working on it. So, you know, that for me would be, you know, if I was Orson Krennic, who's the director of that product, I would have just killed the guy. So yeah, he's got threat modeling designed for security. It's called Elevation of Privileged again.
Yeah.
And there's a blog, and you mentioned another book out. So these are the kinds of people I direct engineers and testers to talk about, to discover more about what security is and how you can inculcate that kind of learning. And we talked about Tanya earlier. So one of the things I do like to think about is defining what an attacker's mindset is. We've touched on it briefly earlier. When you think about what threats are and who could potentially be attacking you. But in order to do that, you have to try and think like that kind of person. And that's where partly going down the rabbit hole can cause, for me personally, I don't know whether it's caused other people problems, but I've had actually mental health issues from having to think like someone that's going to do you harm. And it's made me be wary about, this was before COVID, I was going through a period of depression. I was looking after my father who was dying of cancer. And so I wanted to step fully away from the security mindset because it was actually giving me, I didn't want to have to think about the kinds of people who wanted to do us harm all the time. I want to actually just make good products. But, and thinking like someone who's going to do you harm is potentially that being on your mind the whole time is very hard work. What I have pivoted away from is like thinking about, you know, all of these creatures are the same kind of creature, right? They're all spiders. But all of these spiders catch their prey in very, very different ways. So you have the ground hunters, like this one and this one. That's an Australian funnel web spider there. Probably one of the most venomous in the world. That is a huntsman, that is a golden orb weaver, that's a jumping spider, and that is a redback, not a black widow, I think. So, and they make very complex webs. Some hunt on the ground, some jump from their prey, or some are ground hunters. So they're very adaptable. And I think that hackers in general, or bad actors, or whatever you want to call them, are the most adaptable people that we can encounter when we're doing work. Think about what's happened recently in the Middle East. There's been a lot of hacking going on in the background, which we've probably not been that aware of, unless you're working in that kind of industry, protecting against it. And we've had to pivot our cybersecurity work to protect against that kind of attack, be it towards or against Israel or Hamas or whatever it might be. So there's a lot of work going on right now, which I've been reading about, which has been learning about how those attackers have changed their mindset or their techniques to be able to undermine certain situations. Listen to certain podcasts that help me get into that mindset, like Darknet Diaries. Does anyone here listen to Darknet Diaries? You do. Great podcast. I really, if you don't listen to it yet, please just go back to day one and listen to it from day one. But there's some really good stories there about how attackers have done like really horrid things, or criminals that have used security techniques, social engineering, or even hacking to get the money. Sorry, go ahead. No.
Just on the attacker's mindset, I think one of the biggest challenges that I don't know whether other people have experienced this, I certainly have, is the question you get from people: why would anybody want to attack us?
Yeah.
we're small, we're insignificant,
Yes.
we're off the radar, nobody really knows about us, we're a B2B company, we don't have a flashy brand. Why would somebody attack us?
They're a training ground.
And it's actually, I think it's more than that even. It's nobody is setting out to attack you specifically. You're a chance encounter. And if you're easy enough to attack, then you're just going to be exploited. They don't care who you are, what you're doing, why. It's just that you're there and you can be attacked. And there's also the aspect of the attack as a service. So
Yes.
You don't, especially when it comes to ransomware or data exfiltration and that sort of thing. Increasingly, organised criminal gangs don't require the technical capabilities to perform very complex attacks. So it's about, instinctively, if you talk to business leaders in particular, I think one or two things. One, why would somebody attack me? And actually, how many really clever attackers are there? Nation states level threats are there out there? A lot, because they're commoditized now.
Yes.
These people have websites and phone numbers you can call for customer support. And so it's the strength and sophistication of attacks that can be targeted against very small businesses.
You think about things like the Phoenix Group and people like that. I think they built the malware that went on.
Yeah, there are a lot. I can't think of specific names off the top of my head, but so I think that's interesting. When you think about attackers' mindset, yes, you need to think about, okay, do you have a vector by which somebody specifically is targeting you? And yes, maybe you do. But often it's chance, often it's complete good. And all you have to do actually is increase the bar just enough so that somebody looks at you and now too difficult goes to the next person.
Yeah.
So that's also about attacking mindset.
That's a really good point. Thank
One thing
you.
I'd say as well is, I was looking at the fun works spider. So there's two things I want to say. One, I didn't sit on the toilet for about 3 weeks after my dad told me that they were fun work spiders. And the second one is that one's about insider threats.
Yeah.
So that's both witting and unwitting, which you have people who are just muppets and they get, things happen. But you've currently got some organised crime groups who are openly advertising for insiders for ransom, to deploy ransomware.
Yeah, they do.
Basically, just want they want remote access. What the current thing is. And the other one, in a former life, I used to do some criminal investigations and stuff like that. And the hardest case I ever dealt with was not actually an external attacker; it was an internal developer who knew the system well enough to modify the logs. That's what he'd done, and pins make it a bit of something else. The door went through, and all those sorts of things. Actually, it's the insider as well, and they were fine on the day they were hired. It was later on when they got gambling.
Well,
so
yeah.
All your checks and balances. You say, "Oh, did we check it out?" Yeah, fine. Actually, stuff went on later. So those things. I don't want to make it sound like more of a horror story.
No,
people do silly things.
It's true though. I mean, people don't. You operate on trust, don't you? A lot of people. Companies will operate on trust, but actually, you should run a zero trust approach. When you hire someone, you don't give them the keys to the castle immediately. You don't have access to every area of the building or every building inside a company. I mean, if I want to go to the Redmond office near Seattle, I have to apply to get access to the building first. Similarly, if I just want to go to the Paddington office for the day, I work out of the Enfield office, which opened recently. So I only have access to the Enfield office and our data center, internal one. I can't go anywhere else. I can't unless I can't even go to the Reading headquarters and play on the brand new Xboxes they've got in there, and they do have Xboxes in the canteen.
Yeah, touched on earlier. It's not just about where you can do; it's what you can do.
What you can do.
You can't use card. I can kind of get that.
Yeah.
And as much as I want everybody in our, I get requests from the teams to say, "Oh, I want," they want everybody wants Zap or everybody wants Wireshark or something. I kind of want you to be interested. I want you to do it, but equally, I don't want you to leave it's like your blades. Don't leave the weapons lying around for someone living off the land, because equally, I don't want that across my network widely. The adversary who lands and finds, "Hey, I've got Wireshark. I'm getting over." You left it for me. So it's that balance between empowering everybody to do what is sensible, but without scoring any own goals.
Yeah.
There's actually a NIST advisory out currently about a Chinese threat group who specialise in living off the land attacks. There's quite an in-depth one, so if you go
And there's living off the land with your standard tools that exist on any desktop, but then there's living on the land, they've given them extra tools.
Anyway, okay, so the next person I want to refer to. This is Saskia Copelands. She founded a company called Digital Interruption, which is a security consultancy. They're based out of Manchester. I know Saskia personally, and also Jay Harris is the other founder. And they came up with RexScan, which is an Android app scanner. Anyway, she's one of the other people who does a lot of threat modeling and talking about security at conferences. So this one is on the Ministry of Testing website, unmasking security, seeing through the eyes of attackers. So taking that, learning about attacking mindsets and how they operate. So I would then direct, if you want to get into that, talk to the people who know about those kinds of people like yourselves, and then go off. And she did a talk, I think at TestBash Manchester a few years ago, about hacking the Death Star. So it's interesting. She's great. The other one is like setting up the defender's mindset. Does anyone know which castle that is, by the way?
I've been there on holiday. It's beginning with B.
Odium.
I think it's a barn.
I need to
I need to go and get my eyes tested. It's Bodiam Castle in East Sussex. It's not far from where I grew up. So obviously you've got the moat is the main initial form of defence, but then you've got portcullises and bridges, and you've got boiling oil pouring through the holes. This is one of the most intact castles in the country, where you can actually go and see the battlements and the defence mechanisms inside. And we are part of that for our products. We are the moat, we are the portcullises, we are the bridges, we are the arrow slits, we are the boiling oil and the sticking mud and the arrows and the spears. We are those people. And we have a defender's mindset. It might be that we are defending at the organizational level, at a strategic level, but we also need people who are more tactical and able to think and solve problems tactically as well. So getting those kinds of questions asked and developing that thought, you have to do both. Doing red teaming and blue teaming is great and things like that. And or doing a bug hunt or a capture flag exercise, but do it on your own products. Not only who can attack us, but how can we defend against that attack? What is the best method? Do I pick people off from a mile away with a sniper rifle, or do I put mines out in front of my building, like tripwires that people will tick off, like if you use an intrusion detection system, for example? That's a good way of putting in some defense. One of the great things with working with testers is that they will generate great test ideas. If you have testers in your organization and they are doing exploratory testing, they are going to be the kinds of people who are going to ask and answer awkward questions and come up with test ideas to help explore those questions. So use them, and if you have them, they are a great resource. They'll want to be thinking about all the interfaces to the product, whether it's a web front end or an API or whatever it might be, or a file upload or whatever the interface might be, a mobile application. Those are the kinds of things that are going to be at risk to your product, and the people that are testing them every single day are going to be very helpful to be able to help you find some of these security flaws, even if they don't know that they're doing it actively. Similarly, the services that underlie our products, they provide system information and data, they protect us. So through things like brute force protection, we trust them with information and data, and they communicate data around us. Can anybody recognize this man? All these men are the same man. Who are they?
It's Michael Caine.
Well, one of them is Michael Caine. Well, what character?
Alfred.
Alfred from Batman. Yeah, they're all Alfred. And they're trustworthy, they're honest, they have integrity, they protect and they conceal, and you can, Bruce trusts them with their secrets, right? And they will keep you honest. So you want an Alfred in your org. Sorry, it's a bit flippant, but I think it's a great analogy for how the kinds of people and organizational structural change you can make to make things more secure. You all need Alfreds, we all could be Alfreds. What's important, where do you keep and store things? And especially important for me at the moment, working in the cloud, containers and infrastructure. This is like mostly where my work happens now, because we're all developing things for cloud-based architectures using containerization of most kinds. It's important that I've been spending a lot of my training, free time training. There's a day of learning every quarter or something like that, or every month that I can use to do any training I like in Microsoft. And then on top of that, I can use any free time I have to do any learning. First thing I'm going into at the moment is Kubernetes security learning. How do you set it up for good security? Talking about security by default and design, one of those things is how you build that in a container level. I'm not a developer, a very good one. I have done some, but I need to be able to understand how things are built in order to how to test them. So that's why I do that work. So the other thing is, we were talking about earlier about how to develop mindsets. So thinking about how you are as a different type of user. Fairly simplistic approaches here, but tell a story. If you're using a product, you want to register as a user, log in with credentials, purchase something if it's a product that allows you to buy anything, leave some feedback, rate and review a product, recite, this is for the juice shop, by the way, because I did it for the juice shop. Has anybody used the Elwhash juice shop yet? It's a few people. It's basically a vulnerable web app for training. Very helpful. And similarly, has anybody been to the Mirror universe? As a malicious attacker, I want to expose and steal user credentials, admin credentials, log in with stolen user credentials, purchase something with someone else's money, leave some nasty customer feedback, rate and review a product so much that it kills the service, and prevent users from using the service. So again, very simplistic ideas, but helps develop that thinking about how you shift your testing questions to use these different approaches. Yes, there's a positive way through, but also what is the negative journey through that product? We're near the end. So we talked a little about tools, and I won't dwell on that, but things like Zap and stuff like that are very helpful. Again, it's one of the slides that I use when I'm talking to testers and others that aren't security professionals. So I started thinking about testing for security in 2013-14, and you may have noticed from the first slide there was an Easter egg as to my fandom and on my arm, if you're eagle-eyed. Anyone know what these people are? I think we all do. Most British folk do know what a Dalek is. So I came up with this in 2014. It's not DICE, it's not as easy as that, but it's explore threats, experiment, understanding risk, monitoring the application while it's under threat, interrogating. They do that a lot. They interrogate you a lot. See the beginning of part 2 of Destiny of the Daleks. There's lots of interrogation in that story. Analysis, so using that monitoring and interrogation to extrapolate potential risks and things like that. And then making sure your testing is targeted, and that is delivered quickly, because attackers will change their approach based on are you an easy enough target, or will they have to put in some effort to make that work? And you have to have that mindset. Now, when I came up with this, yes, it was a bit of fun because I'm a Doctor Who fan, but also I think, these chaps would do anything to try and bypass your security if it was an something that met their objective, right? And ultimately they want to destroy us. So,
As long as it wasn't a penny stone.
well, they've been able to climb stairs since 1988. Thank you very much. Like cliffhanger to part 1 of Remembrance of the Daleks. If you weren't watching, that's not my problem.
I don't know where they were flying more recently.
No, if you go back to Sylvester McCoy era, they climbed some stairs. And it was inferred in The Chase, which from 1965, when they were on the Mary Celeste.
Definitely over actually.
Yeah, sorry. So I came up with that. So yeah, modify your mindset, understand the architecture, generate exploratory test ideas to help with security testing, and then utilize your tools or make your own. You can see there's Zap right here, John. I think one of these is probably, that's a fuzzy, that's a fuzzer. I built a fuzzer in Python once to learn Python, that was fun. Just out of a book. That's it, thank you very much. You can get me at the test doctor on Twitter or what I'd really love is for us to generate am I going about this the right way? Am I thinking about this with the right approach to generating positive thinking and changing mindsets in getting or any kind of engineer or businesses in general interested in security? Are we taking the right approach here? Are there any flaws or any concerns you might have, but also organisations like OWASP, we exist, but there's only so many of us here. We need to go back to our orgs and have that conversation, right? What can we do to make that better?
The first thing I'd say, CIA triad is something we all get drilled with as part of the security sort of lexicon, isn't it?
Yes.
Increasingly now, and I would strongly advocate it, stick an S in there for safety. With AI and the implications that could have, and with privacy and what sort of damage it could do to somebody with privacy breaches, and then increasingly IoT and the physical world impacts that security flaws can have. Safety, I think, is another thing that we need to be protecting and considering with what we're doing and thinking about what affects to safety, human safety. And that can be physical safety, and that can be mental and sort of well-being safety in terms of financial safety, for example, or something else. So that would be a positive change.
Sure. So the CIA acronym's been around for quite a long time, right? We don't own that, but as a community, I think we have the power to change that, or at least shift the focus to those aspects we think are important. And if we're pushing those boundaries, then we just have to repeat that message, I think.
Yeah, you're wrong, because as well as those, there's all the other things that technology enables, industrial controls, valves and things. You think, actually, that is, I guess you could say it's integrity-ish, but yeah, safety probably is important. I was thinking about something myself on a more much narrower basis, was around, you mentioned about exploratory testing.
Mm-hmm.
It was going through my head around how that fits with gaps. So typically, some of our cheaper pen tests are tool monkeys, so they'll throw a tool and stuff and other stuff, and that's that. The better ones will do lots of manual testing. One of the things that I often see as a gap in the scopes that I write will be a lot around business logic.
Yes.
So I know that we're doing SaaS and DaaS, so hopefully, as long as we've got them on and we haven't any clangers and we have been read, they shouldn't, their automated tools probably won't find too much, fingers crossed. But it's things like your testers where that overlap is, I can't remember this week where someone said one of the KBV, a knowledge base, so the tool will work perfectly, there's no vulnerabilities in it, but there's a question that will be presented to someone to do with resetting passwords, and it's got 7 options. And it's those things that Yeah, okay, it functioned, it works fine, there's no vulnerability, but there's a tester might say, if I throw it 7, can I throw it 8?
Yeah.
Which is my first question, how many attempts have I got? And, it's things like that which typical tools will say, well, it works as it's programmed to do, because it does.
And that's where sometimes tester knowledge is often dismissed as being an edge case. But if that 8th attempt caused something that catastrophically impacted the authentication mechanism for that application, then surely we should be paying attention to that question.
And then there was another thing they said, well, there is a defense because you only have X number of times. I said, well, and so the same account can't be attacked. I said, but if I'm parallel that, if I've got a dump, and I've got, 100,000 threads, I'm going to, or details, I'm going to try to pass that question over. So I've got it's just an email address as the first part of the identity process. If I've got that and I can parallel attack it, would you spot it? Is the second bit. That's those sorts of things. I think. Well, it's sort of security. It's sort of quality. It's sort of quality. But it's more business logic, and it often. I think there's no harm in somebody else also trying to find it.
But depending on what they do,
doesn't-
you see it at the network level, the jump and request.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So
But the person doing the network monitoring probably isn't aware of what the app is.
it's like really like all form or something like that.
Yeah.
There's
Yeah, you should.
there's a bot in Russia that was attacking one of our servers. It was doing one request every 2 minutes. So-
Yeah.
And it was I just noticed it because I just went, that IP address is doing a lot of activity, but they could have easily distributed that across multiple IP addresses.
So what we do a lot of client fingerprinting, particularly on like TLS handshakes, and particularly a new implementation from JA4, which is basically hashes of each little part of the protocol process.
Yeah.
So it becomes very easy then to identify certain toolings and other things.
Could they change that though?
I don't really know what you got that much, but JA3 was normally when you do it, which was like a hash of the TLS hello. So you have common client fingerprints between Golang or like browsers. Chrome broke it because then they started randomizing ciphers, so you can actually
All these cycles.
yeah, that was the ciphers, but now they brought out something to say what Chrome was doing. You could attempt to read all the ciphers afterwards during your time. Yeah.
If I was an attacker and I was thinking about how would AI help me in my one of the biggest things I think we should be on the lookout for is using AI to randomize and hide attack pathways. To make it look like monitor something, understand what regular user traffic looks like, regular app traffic looks like, and then mimic it. Bury your attacks in those patterns.
Sometimes you see that at a code level, like user agents and things like that, but it's still at a protocol level. It's very easy to identify a particular client. That's typically the thing you get. And they also use very old frameworks or very old libraries which are passing like Chrome 63 to like two browsers. Like a lot of places will just say that's not a version that would ever work on the internet. So we'll block that. So it's
Lazy coding, isn't it?
Yeah.
I used to use JS2 as a thing, but then look for browsers that have gone back. That makes sense. So you go in today, yours will probably be Chrome the update, but someone using one of like 4,000 machines that used to you'll take out their dump, but it's probably built from a month ago. So the browser will go and run, and that was a sequence like, well, they wouldn't degrade their browser.
Yeah.
So it's come out of a info steamer a month ago, from a mimic the machine from a month ago. The real users actually appear there.
Yeah.
It's really different. But yeah, if you did that with AI, you would spot actually that's a counter contra indicator.
Yeah.
You would do it.
Yeah.
Every time I do that, I get spotted.
Yeah.
So,
So let's not do that.
I was just thinking, you were mentioning earlier about business logic. One, mimic business logic using AI potentially, but the engineers in your teams, and it doesn't even have to be someone that is super technical, it could be a business owner, a product owner of some kind, who knows the business logic, right, because they wrote it. And they could be in your org helping you with this. Oh, right. We need to get the security mindset in those people too, I think. And to be able to say, What gaps are we missing here? How can we push beyond? It shouldn't just be an engineering problem.
So I think the other way to tackle the business logic problem actually is to think about how big an issue it is. And you do that by structuring your testing regime to mimic the attack vectors that you might experience. So there's testing before release, which is part of your sanitation and good hygiene and good development practices. But at some point, you have a product that is out there in the wild that could get attacked by somebody. And those attacks are of a range of complexity. And the more complex ones are going to exploit business logic flaws. So, for example, say we use pen testing, which could be mimicking script kiddies, just some firing tools at it.
Yeah.
We use a bug bounty, which is going to be people who will fire tools at it, and potentially, depending on how much effort they will put in, they will do a little bit more than that potentially. But they're still volumes of economies of scale. They can't spend too long doing something because they've got to get a bounty out of it. So that's another layer of attack there. But then we also use red teams, and that's where your business logic failures come in, because they're like, okay, we're going to targeted have a look at this. We're going to try and understand it. We're going to read manuals. We're going to use all of the stuff that's out there on the internet. Now, parking your insider risk to one side, because that's a really complex, gnarly issue when it comes to business logic. Business logic flaws are only exploitable by people who either have a lot of time to spend poking around in free trials of products and learning how it works, or read a lot of stuff online. So they're persistent. They're the people who they think there's something juicy there and they really want to go for it. So just mimicking that sort of attack vector in your testing regime can go a long way to solve that.
That's brilliant. Thank
The
you.
thing is, your platform can still enable that type of behavior by default as well.
Yeah.
If you're a hosting provider or something who provides like edge services, then it's just like some customers set up things like siphon boxes and these sorts of things, which can just like, which is fine to use, but illegal elsewhere, so it comes with different complications.
Yeah.
Also, one thing is to when you were asking earlier about how you could push this towards the teams that testers get more into security. When it comes to security in general, it's quite a new thing still. We're trying to push it quite new. Say if someone to learn development, there'll be a lot of courses on it. There's like step by step, learn this. When it comes to security, it's a bit more scattered. It's a bit more.
There is a lot of training available. I mean, I'm quite lucky because I've got access to LinkedIn Learning and Plural's site and lots of other situations like that, which I can get access to as an employee of Microsoft. But there are numerous avenues to that. One of the best, I think, will be the work that Tanya Chek has done. She Hacks Purple website, but also even like some of the material that's on the OWASP website, which has got mountains of information on pointers to where to do training. I think that we could do better there, though. I mean, internally, what do we offer our employees? Is that built in from the ground up when we train our testers and our developers to be able to think from a security perspective? And I think that comes from doing things like bug bounties internally, by having a bug hunt, solid block of time where we're not building new features, we're just there finding bugs and their specific security issues. I think that's a good place to start. I mean, where I've used, for example, tools like Zap, is not to necessarily find bugs and vulnerabilities. It's to gather data to then find bugs and vulnerabilities. So even simply training myself, intercepting data from the target application, understanding what the data looks like, how it could potentially be manipulated, what kinds of controls does it have on it, what the infrastructure looks like, is it using older libraries, for example. Those are things that are very quick to surface. They might not be a high priority fix, but they are important. But the data that provides, for example, if I was doing this on the OWASP G-Shop and I was showing someone it for the first time, I would say, okay, where are the data entry points? Where could you change or manipulate information as a user? and that's login fields, data entry fields, the URL. You know, you just have to use your eyes. And I think the mindset isn't just for security engineers or any kind of, it's being able to,
Thank you very much.
cheers.
All the best tomorrow.
being able to just situational awareness of any kind is helpful when you're doing this kind of work.
The other thing too, if you're thinking about how to develop, keep an eye on the UK cybersecurity councils. So they're a body that is they're the professional body for cybersecurity in the UK. They're piloting the charter route at the moment, but they're developing out their skills pathways, their career pathways within the cyber profession. And it's early days on the website at the moment. Over time, that will be built out, and it will say training. You know, for this type of security professional, these courses, this training pathway, these skills.
That's why I feel like it's hard to find. It's not like, because it's not as popular as like, I'm not trying to fix like a learning to so it's hard to find out progression can it's just not here.
Yeah.
Students because it's next sort of like, okay, you want to do pen testing, where do you start? And then what's the next level? Okay, that maybe what's the next progression, what's the next progression, so it's harder to find, but obviously nowadays it's more popular nowadays. There's courses coming out which just naturally happen over time. I feel like if companies pushed up towards their testers or just a company in general, like here's a course, here's a progression, or here's a plan, learn this, learn this, which make it much more easier for them to develop or chase it themselves.
I think one thing that has struck me over a few years is that when people are recruiting for a security type engineer, and they're recruiting from an existing pool that's quite small, and we need to grow that pool. And sometimes folks are looking for unicorns. Yeah, you need to know about, you know, SIEM or be able to do scripting in X number of languages, or a language that's only, you need 10 years in this language, but that language has only been around for maybe 2. You know, that kind of ridiculous ask. That's where the boundary between running a team, recruiting and hiring, because you generally don't have time to do that yourself, you hire people to do that for you and they don't get it right. And also making available the kind of material that you're asking for, you know, it is available, you just have to look for it. And it is there. You know, there are quite a few independent training companies that deliver it, but it's expensive. And companies don't generally want to spend money at the moment.
I think Musk taking over Twitter was one of the biggest hits to the security body of knowledge that's happened recently, because Twitter used to be just this incredible space. You could go and follow She Hacks Purple and Reece Schneier and everybody. They were all in one place, and you could just follow them all.
Yes.
And as soon as Musk took over, they fragmented. They went, some went to Mastodon.
Yeah, somewhere in Blue Sky, somewhere on Mastodon.
And it's just like, where do you get? There isn't one place to follow.
Yeah. That has been, yeah, it's like, I hate to bring up the Death Star again, but it's like all around being blown up, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, sorry.
No. So the thing I've always wanted is to get more people into security. You know, that's kind of what the OWASP thing is. And I think it's very easy, you know, we're geeks, we're a little bit more focused on the technical details, and you talk about how deep down the hole do you go.
Yeah.
That's often focused at the bottom of the hole, the really complex details.
Yeah.
I also quite like looking at the stuff that's easy for everyday people to use. So when I'm developing applications, I'm always thinking about things like usability. I like users to be able to go into a system without much training, and they should be able to understand what's going on. But they should also be able to make mistakes. So they should be able to delete something and go, whoops, undelete it. They should be able to edit something and be able to, a bit difficult when sending an email, a bit difficult to retrieve that. But with that mindset of a system that can handle mistakes, that same person should be able to start going, what happens if I did do something intentionally wrong? You know, I put in a date of birth that means that this person's 5,000 years old. Seems a bit weird. Basic testing, but then you can start going, well, okay, one's about, does the age have an effect on some conditions? You know, does a person get a discount if they put on a certain age? You know, if they're under 18, it may be cheaper. And you're getting just normal everyday people from the entire organisation to start asking questions. Because I like it when people ask questions and then they try it out themselves and they know that it's not going to be the end of the world, because the system should be able to handle anything that's thrown at it, theoretically. I know
It should.
reality.
And I found a way of getting free cake,
Cool.
which I will talk about after we turn the live stream off.
Actually, I know one. I worked on the Huggies website and they're giving out
Don't get
free.
cake from Huggies.
No, not Huggies. They were giving out freebies. So the idea is you put in your address and they would send you just a free pack. And someone lived at number 10 Robert Street, but they put in 10A, 10B, 10C, 10D, and they just kept on doing it. If they had separated them over multiple days, no one would notice. It's because I just happened to be going through the table. I was like, hang on a minute, these are all in. They just sat there over the course of an hour and just filled out. And I was sort of doing the thing of going, I kind of want them to get away with it. But unfortunately, they would have noticed it when packaging. But it was that sort of a normal person. They weren't technical. It was just someone thought, could I do this? Because they couldn't have multiple ones sent to the same address, but adding that little letter on the end, and the postman was looking at it going, but there isn't a 10ZZZ address, but there is a 10, knock on the door. We've got a load of these. But yeah, I don't know, I think that's quite fun. But anyway, sorry, yes.
Yeah.
Stop the stream.
Bye everyone.
I think going back to you, I wasn't sure if it's like having like